Okay. Welcome to Porch Play Chat, sponsored by the American Association for the Child's Right to Play, or more affectionately called IPA USA. IPA USA is the USA affiliate of the International Play Association, and as part of our efforts to promote play, back in 2020 during the pandemic, we introduced Porch Play Chat. So free to you on our YouTube channel are 315 Porch Play Chats on a variety of topics that are just conversations you can listen to as you're driving or stuck in traffic. And they're easy to find. You go to ipausa.org, and up in the top right-hand corner is our Facebook link and our YouTube channel. If you friend us, I think you do on Facebook, and subscribe to YouTube. On Facebook, every Monday morning, a brand new Porch Play Chat appears in your feed. And so you have something to listen to every Monday morning. I'm Deb Lawrence, and I'm co-president of IPA USA. And with me on the porch today is Monica Rollins. Monica, welcome.
Hi, thank you. Thanks for having me.
I met Monica when we were on it was an online conference, but Carla Ward from Canada had the great idea of bringing some of the presenters together for an hour chat on each day of the conference. And I was so impressed with Monica. Monica lives in Los Angeles, so it's early for her, but she operates the Rooted Wellness Collective. And so
Yes.
that should get you really interested in things that we're going to talk about. And she really helps early childhood and other organizations focus on creating a human-centered workplace by bringing in all this wellness and social emotional development and trauma-informed leadership practices and make it part of their culture, which being a trauma-informed person myself, I think is so important. If we're going to treat humans as humans, we need to understand what might be going on in there. And so
Hmm.
she's going to talk to us about social emotional development through yoga with children. And I
Yeah.
think, well, boy, do we need to be more human in this time and day.
hmm
And so before we started, you were talking about how kid yoga might be a sort of a trendy thing, but we're going to get a little deeper than that. It's something that's really healthy.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think just to kind of start us off, is it okay if I do a more official intro of myself?
Absolutely.
Cool. Thank you. Okay, so my name is Monica Rollins, and I'm so glad you pronounced my name correctly because usually people say Rollins and it like gets under my skin a little bit. So I love that. My pronouns are she, her, and like Deb mentioned, I am the founder and CEO of Rooted a Wellness Collective. And my main priority is giving preschool teachers the nervous system and regulation literacy that sometimes I think is missing from social emotional learning curricula. I think oftentimes we spend a lot of time on the checklist for social emotional developmental domains for children, but we sometimes forget about the fact that in order for adults to practice effective co-regulation strategies, we as adults also need to figure out what our trigger points are and figure out, what really ticks us off and then have our own toolkit to be able to come back to alignment, balance, and regulation for ourselves before we can ever think that we can teach those skills to young children. And I really believe that yoga and mindfulness is the vehicle to teach these skills to both the teachers and the adults in the classroom and also the kiddos. So that's a little bit about that. And the reason that I came to this is I have been studying and practicing yoga for probably 25 years at this point. Um, I come from a family, I always say jokingly, I come from a family of shrinks and educators. And so my grandparents were psychiatrists, psychologists. My mom was a public school teacher. My aunt was a special ed public school teacher. And my father owned and operated a yoga studio in Southern California before he passed away. And so he's really the one that got me into the yoga scene. And what I take from yoga has really evolved over the last, over 2 decades. And I think to answer your question around this idea that yoga, especially kids yoga, can be like trendy, I think we have what I call a wellness industrial complex in this country. And I think a lot of this idea of mental health, wellness, all these things have really been commodified
Mhm.
in our capitalistic society, if you will. And so I mean, it's a multi-million dollar industry. And so it's really easy, especially in early childhood environments, if you have a large budget to, go and buy yourself the fanciest materials and the coolest looking kids yoga mats and the plastic um equipment to like teach yoga and mindfulness. And there's so much more than that. You and I were talking about the yoga decks, right?
Mhm.
Like the decks of cards with like the poses on them.
Mhm.
Um, and yeah, I'm here to say that it really goes beyond just the trendy, like let's get kids into downward dog and do some yoga breathing. Like there's so much more
So
to it
much
than
more.
that.
And I think the benefit for the teachers, and when we you cannot help a child learn how to regulate if you are dysregulated. Probably
Exactly.
because the child is dysregulated. Some of us are so empathic that we just go, we dive into what the child is feeling, and that's not helpful. But if children can learn techniques that are sustainable, that are repeated on a regular basis, so that it becomes part of how they are handling their emotions and handling who they are as a person. Woo, what a difference our classrooms and the human world would be.
Totally. I actually have a fun anecdote that segues perfectly from that. I was working at a preschool in Manhattan for many years, and I left the school uh, for a stint because I decided to go teach in Singapore for a little while, and it didn't really work out. So when I returned back to New York City, I had to kind of hobble together a bunch of different like side gigs. And one of them was teaching yoga to a small group of 4-year-olds um, who were in the preschool where I used to teach.
Mhm.
And I had stayed in touch with a lot of the families because I had had some of the older siblings of those kiddos earlier on. And towards the end of our second round of this kid's yoga class, I met with them for 45 minutes, one time a week for 6 weeks. And then we did 2 rounds of that. I got an email from a mother of one of the girls in my class, and she said, we're really going through it right now. Clara is having a lot of big feelings because we're doing this big move, and she's all she's ever known in her life is these friends, this preschool, these routines, this city. And it's really, kind of out of the ordinary for her because she was typically like a really even keeled, like chill kid, pretty
Mhm.
well regulated, well attuned. But this move was really like doing something to her. So one morning, this mother, she found Clara kind of like in the corner in the hallway with her eyes closed, sitting crisscross. And the mom was like, she looked so peaceful. I didn't want to bother her, but I'm like, what in the hell is she doing? And so later on in the day, she had asked, hey, I saw you were doing that earlier. Like, what was going on? And Clara said something to the effect of, Well, I was feeling really frustrated, so I was doing my yoga breathing, like Monica taught me, because I know that that helps me with my big feelings. And to get an email like that from the mom, just, I think it just sums everything up. Like, that is literally social emotional skill building to a T. And it's not like I sprinkled magic fairy dust or I was doing anything incredibly revolutionary. It just took 45 minutes one time a week. And she was able to internalize and integrate her own toolkit and then be able to reach for that on her own at 4 years old when
No,
she
I
knew
mean,
that she
that's
was
like
elevated.
crazy. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's because she practiced and she found it probably it felt good, right? It
Yeah.
after a while they go, oh, we're gonna do yoga, but then they begin to see the benefits of it. And so that's a beautiful story that shows how that continuous sort of repetition.
Yeah.
And for 45 minutes in yoga, it seems a long time for a 4-year old, but I
Yeah.
bet it wasn't because they were moving, whether it
Yeah.
was slow, changing positions, doing
Yeah. I
and
would also
practicing.
say that the way that I, this is a conversation around play. And
Mhm,
also I think it's important to remember that play also has to be like in a container. It's not always just a free for all. Um, and so while the children have a lot of joy and fun, and there is like these elements of ness within the way that I teach, there is also a lesson. And
mhm,
so the way that I structure kids' yoga classes for 45 minutes, there's always, it's just like the routine in a preschool classroom, right? Kids need that sense of routine, the predictability, they're familiar with kind of the flow of everything. And
mhm,
so it wasn't just like, okay, let's do a bunch of downward dogs and then let's play musical chairs and then let's do some yoga breathing. Like there was a clear flow to the
mhm,
lesson. So we always opened it up with an opening ritual. And that would typically be some type of um, breathing exercise coupled with really sharing, like, what is the theme of today? And so, first and foremost, I always set the foundation of like, what is yoga, right?
mhm,
So kids even have the vocabulary of that, and they're able to say things like, "Oh, it's, when my mom does exercise, or you use a mat, or you do yoga breathing." And so
mhm,
we talk about the four key elements of yoga, which is movement, breathing, focus, and rest time.
mhm,
And we practice all four elements of that in every single class. And so, for example, um, okay, so we have the opening focus lesson and the opening ritual. And then we move into about 20 or so, 25 minutes of movement. And during the movement, I am always sprinkling in moments of the focus lesson. And then we have kind of like a calming down. So we like slow down some of the movement a little bit. And
mhm,
then we end with a closing ritual. And so within that structure, I'll give you an example. Let's say the theme of the day is bravery. This is a topic that 4-year-olds are primed to talk about because
mhm,
it happens on a daily basis in their life, right? Like they could be scared to take an escalator down this to the subway. And so they need to be brave and try on something new. Maybe they're at the playground and they're trying the monkey bars for the first time. That could be really scary. So they put on their brave face and they try it. And so in yoga, what I would do is I would incorporate a lot of movement exercises that involves bravery. So balancing poses like tree pose or airplane pose. And we talk about what does it mean to feel a little funky when you're flipping your body upside down or sideways, or what does it feel like when you're balancing and it feels a little wobbly and scary and you fall down, what happens in that moment. And, they'll talk about things like, oh, I fell down and I got right back up, right? Like that's bravery. And so it's those little moments of it doesn't have to just be let's be cute downward dogs and let's do our butterfly pose. Like we can really go deep with kids in a
Yeah.
fun and playful way.
Well, and I think that's the reason why you were able to hold them for 45 minutes too, right?
Mm,
Because you had an intention
yes,
to start with, and then you reinforce that intention as they were moving, which they have to do as young children, they've got to move.
hmm
But then you were constantly sprinkling in that fairy dust of how this is helping you go through our intention for
Yeah,
this period of time. And it was a consistent sort of flow to that period. All things that are already, they can predict what's going to happen next. It makes them feel safe and comfortable. There's no
exactly.
surprises. And I imagine it was in a peaceful place.
hmm
And so there wasn't all the chatter of other kids around them and all those distractions. I'm in a classroom having a place where there wasn't all that chatter. I always tell teachers, you can leave. They can't.
hmm
You have
hmm
to you have to sort of recognize that some kids just need to get away from that noise. So what a that I would have as a child loved it because I'm auditory. So
Mm,
I can only handle so much auditory stimulation at a time.
yeah, for sure. And that's the other thing too. I think we were having that discussion during the summit about like we need to like have more music in the classroom, and I'm over here like
Yeah.
we need less of that, we need a little less of that so that we can give our nervous systems the time to down regulate, because when we're constantly being bombarded by so much stimuli, whether
Mm-hmm.
it's chatter, whether it's music, whether
It's
it's
the lights.
construction, from
Mhm.
an urban neighborhood, the sirens of the like we are constantly getting bombarded with all this external stuff. And so no wonder it's even for adults, it's hard to find that inward focus and that stillness.
Mhm.
And so I very rarely, if at all, during yoga, for kids, do I incorporate any kind of music, which might be
Mhm.
kind of controversial with this
Mhm.
audience, but maybe not.
Mhm.
And even on in my own practice, it took me a long time for me to be comfortable to go into a yoga studio that always filled the yoga room with music.
Mhm.
And I know that it's a common trend that happens, but I'm always really pleasantly surprised when I have teachers that just have a silent class, like not a silent class, but they don't incorporate music or sound.
Mhm.
So
It's
I
refreshing.
appreciate that. Yeah.
It's refreshing
Yeah.
because you're able. I think music, you know, when I'm creating anything, whether it's I'm writing a paper or I'm creating a presentation, I have to have perfect silence.
Mm,
I can't have that. Sometimes I just go away and go someplace where
hmm
I can't hear anything because it's a way you can't relax and focus
hmm
and be creative when
Yeah.
everything is around you. If you're auditory, I don't know about the visual folks, or
Yeah.
I know I'm sort of also kinesthetic tactile, so I need to be able to
hmm
touch, move, and feel. So, you know, children in our classrooms need time. And it's not like you do yoga in the classroom and there's still lots of activity going on. It's not a choice to me. It's not a choice in the classroom if it's really going to do
Correct.
its work.
Well, I think elements of it can be considered a choice. So I think we see a lot of classrooms that have like calm corners or like cozy corners. And
Mm-hmm.
I think in that sense, that's yoga, right? Because you have a cozy, more quiet space in the room during
Mhm.
free play or choice time. I also notice what I think is really cool. I used to work for this early Head Start program, and we would put on these big festivals,
Mhm.
um, like a spring festival or a winter party or things like that. And myself and our disabilities manager, we always advocated to have like a quiet zone
Mhm.
for that event because not to your point, like not all children can handle that level of stimuli, whether it's visual, whether it's tactile, whether it's auditory. And
Mhm.
so we always had like a little corner for kids to kind of just like chill out and relax. That could be very um like that could really amp up a kid. And then that's where we start to see the behavior challenges because
Of course.
if there's so much going on that their internal body, their nervous system doesn't know how to process, then
Mhm.
it's going to manifest itself into what we consider these behavior challenges. So I think it's really important. That's one way in a classroom that you can kind of have it as a choice.
Mhm.
But when I'm doing actual yoga lessons that go for like 30, 40 minutes, absolutely. It would be more like a
Has to be.
special. It
Yeah.
would like a movement special, or I know in Reggio inspired schools, they'll have time to go to the atelier or like the art space. And so it's just that for that
Mhm.
chunk of time.
It's just that. And that's why I was saying that, because sometimes I think teachers might, who don't understand how deep it can be,
Yeah.
might be doing yoga over here while the blocks are going over here and the music's playing in the
Yeah.
background and housekeeping is having very active it. And so that's not really, that's moving their bodies, which is good, but it's not the deep intention that yoga brings.
Yeah.
um, Before we started, Monica and I were talking about Ashtanga yoga, which is the yoga I do because it's very slow movements, and it to me, it just, you flow from one position to another position, which is what I love. Instead of
Hmm.
stopping and starting all the time. And
Hmm.
that that sort of flow worked for me.
Hmm.
That's the kind of movement that I felt really comfortable with. Not everybody would feel comfortable with that, but it was a peaceful room. There was
Yes.
no distractions. The yoga instructor, who was incredible, didn't even talk. He just started,
Hmm.
and it was like the same movement. So after you'd been there for several sessions, you knew which
Right.
way you were going and what you were doing and how you were flowing. And it just was so soothing to me. I would just leave and go, oh,
Hmm.
but there was no other stimulation. It was
Right.
just, everybody was quiet. No one was, it was just amazing. I need to get back to it. And so for me, I need to get back. And so anyway, though, it's that sort of phase that you
Yes.
can't do with a room of 30 children all at once, but
Yeah. And let
you
me be clear, when I was integrating kids yoga in the preschool setting, it very rarely was all like the most kids I ever had in a class was probably 17.
mhm,
And it is a lot more challenging to try and do a 30-minute yoga lesson with all 17 kids. I've done it. It's not ideal.
mhm.
Um, and it's kind of like herding cats,
Yeah.
especially the first couple sessions. But I would say that if you do have a large group and you don't have the luxury of having like two assistants in your classroom or, a couple aides or things like that, it's possible. It's just not ideal. And know that I think one of the other myths about kids yoga that I'm here to bust is it's not going to look like an adult yoga class.
Right.
And so really adjust your expectations that A, children are going to be able to follow along with your instructions. If you're not trained in the type of instructions to give or the like the cadence and like what you were saying with your teacher, there was just like a natural flow. It requires a lot of training and nuance um that I think involves some deeper training. You can definitely try it on and do the things that, you've seen maybe in some webinars or in your colleagues' classes, but it does require, like, to do it effectively and to really be able to go deep, it does require some more nuanced and like targeted training. And I've had that luckily. And it's been, I would say, just like with any thing that you practice over the years, like you just hone in and get a little bit better each time. Um, but it does require nuance. I would say the sweet spot is probably, if you can, like what I would do is when I had a class of like, you know, 13 to like 17 kids. Luckily, I had the luxury of me coming in as a yoga teacher. So there were three additional teachers or two additional teachers. And so what we would do is we would split in half groups and it would
Mhm.
be an hour. And then I would work with half the kids for 30 minutes. And then we would switch and I would work with the other half. And that worked out great. I mean, one year I was brought into a 3-year-old class that was I taught in the twos class, so my day ended a lot earlier. And so I was brought into this 3-year-old class to help because there were a lot of kids in there that had IFSPs or were in the evaluation process. Um, some were transferring between an IFSP to an IEP. So like there was just a lot of lots of pieces in movement. And I coached the teaching team. I would say like, hey, why don't we start circle time with some yoga breathing, some like really dedicated, intentional yoga breathing, and let's see what that does. Will they be able to like focus a little bit better? Will they be a little less wiggly? Will they be able to wait their turn? Um, and so we started doing that. We started incorporating different, how do I say this? Like, for example, if they were waiting in line to go to the bathroom, they might be waiting along a wall. And so I would have them push the wall so they can get that sensory feedback,
Yes.
that heavy work that is sometimes needed to really ground kids when they're
Mhm.
feeling a little bit activated. So little things like that, we would just kind of sprinkle into their routine. And then also, what I did was we would have a yoga special once a week. And so that's the class where we split half and half.
Nice.
So we did that once a week, 30 minutes. And in like 3 months, the class was completely different.
Isn't that amazing? And I
Hmm.
think that, I was a toddler teacher for a long time. And so we had 10 toddlers, and toddlers move
Hmm.
all the time and are
Yep.
busy and are loud. And there would be days when I would say, take that five out.
Yep.
And
Mhm.
it was amazing what happened in the room.
Yep.
It
Yep.
came down, right? And so when if you were to have the luxury of having someone who has that training with what intentional yoga can do, and not just the activity with the flashcards, wouldn't it be nice to be able to rotate children through that so that maybe you have 10
Yeah.
and you're in a different room in another space where it's
Yep.
quiet and
Exactly.
they can come down, and that could just be part of the morning routine.
Totally. Yeah.
That they would be play, 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 which is what we want them to do,
Yep.
but that there would be a time when Monica could be there and say, hey, I'm going to go to the yoga room. Who wants to come? And I bet you'd have a lot of children who would say, okay, I'm ready for a break.
I feel like the teachers would be like, I'm going to volunteer these 10 kids to go.
Instead of the children choosing.
Yeah,
But and the other big piece is I think it's hard to be a classroom teacher when you're up all the time
totally.
and then be able to get to that space where you're calm, which helps the children be calm,
Hmm.
and then they can sort of come down. That
Yeah.
hyperarousal continuum that Dr.
Yes.
Perry always talks about
Yep.
is, and I'll ask students who come in dysregulated, right? Students who walk
Yes.
into the college classroom and they're dysregulated. And I have the hyperarousal continuum up. And I'll say, where are you? And
Hmm.
they'll point and I'll say, what do you need from me? And
Mm.
we'll talk about it. And then whatever they need, they could do it. I
Yeah,
I
that's
I
great.
need I need to walk around the hallway, go, right? Because they're not going to learn anything if they're dysregulated. And
Exactly.
and so, sometimes we have to understand that adults are that way too. And so
Hmm.
sometimes we have
Yep.
to walk in the door. I would walk into classrooms because how directors roam around the building all day long, checking in on people. And I would walk into the classroom and see a teacher that looked like she was getting ready to lose it. And I'd say,
Yep.
take a break, I'm here. And so then I would
Yeah,
take over
that's
the
great.
class. And we're all human and we all can't be perfect. And we're all never able to leave everything at the door when we walk in. That's the stupidest rule I
Hmm.
think I have ever heard.
It's unrealistic.
Realistic.
Hmm.
And so you're setting people up for failure, right? If they cannot leave it. So anyway, just
Yeah.
some tips for you out there.
Yeah, for sure. I think that is such a it's such a valid point. And I have found that when I go into preschool programs now and I train early childhood professionals, whether that's at a conference or, an on-site workshop, I've noticed that so many of the adults are so disconnected from their own bodies.
Mm-hmm.
And so and rightfully so, right? We're chronically underpaid, we're undervalued, we're disrespected in society. Like the list goes on of like, of course, we're going to be a little disconnected because we're stressed the F out, you know? And
Mm-hmm.
and it's funny because I did this exercise recently with some Head Start teachers in Utah, and I asked them to label and describe in one or two words what was happening like internally in their body, like what were the sensations that they felt,
Mm-hmm.
and almost unanimously they were able to identify the feeling. They would say, I'm stressed, I'm anxious, I'm angry, I'm hot, whatever the feeling was. And I challenged them to go deeper. I said, this is amazing that you're able to identify the feeling that you have, but I want you to identify what is actually happening in your body that is making you identify that feeling.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're feeling frustrated, do you feel tightness in your chest? Do you feel your cheeks getting hot? Do you feel sweaty in your armpits? If you feel stressed, do you have a headache? Do you feel like gurgly feelings in your belly? Right? And it was hard initially for them to kind of get there because we have become so disconnected. And that's why I thought it was so wonderful for Clara at 4 years old to be able to say, I'm feeling frustrated. I don't feel well inside of my body. So I'm going to sit in a quiet, dark space and do some yoga breathing so that I feel a little bit better inside of my body, right?
And isn't that amazing? What a
It's
life
amazing.
what a life lesson she'll use forever,
I
right?
hope
That she
so.
that she learned when she was 4.
Yeah.
And
And
so
I think at this point like she might be in college or have just, yeah, I think she's in college now. I always
oh,
don't, it makes me feel so old because I'm
I
like,
know.
That was
I
so
know.
long ago. I wonder where those kids are. But like, there's those kids, like, we all have them, right? The ones that just are so ingrained in our memory because they've made such an impact on the way that you were able to teach.
Hmm.
Because in that instance, it's like you were teaching, but then you were also learning yourself as an adult. And I think that's just so beautiful that we have that opportunity as a preschool teacher, you know?
That's the joy of it all,
Yeah,
right?
for
Oh my
sure.
God. When you watch them, like the little, I loved it when, you'd be reading a story or something and they wanted the book and they were talking and excited and asking lots of questions and you were, feeding into that and saying, well, what do you think? And what's going to happen next? And what do you remember? And all this. And they're just so animated.
Mm-hmm.
It is, and you just see their little eyes sparkling. That is
Yeah.
the joy
Yes.
that I feel like we've lost because we're too busy, right? We're
Yeah.
too rushed. And
Yeah.
so I think this has been amazing, Monica.
Yeah.
I think the lesson for people who might be listening to this is slow down. I always say to toddler teachers, slow down because
Yeah.
your
Mm-hmm.
craziness is feeding them to be crazy, right? They're going to
Yeah.
be moving all the time, but you're dysregulating them because you are just, oh, I have to do this and this and this and this and this and this. No, you have to
Yeah.
follow the toddler's lead. You have
Yeah.
to be at their level. You have
Yeah.
to describe what they're, it's just like, stop it.
Mhm.
Stop being so busy and just be with children, right? And that is
Yeah.
such, we just don't do that anymore. We're too busy getting them from one place to another. And so
Well,
Monica's,
one. Yeah.
yeah, it's just crazy. And
Mm-hmm.
so Monica's thinking about strategies that you can use to help children begin to self regulate, which is really what we want them to do. Then you have to be in a place where you can model that
Yeah.
too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you have to,
And
yeah.
I would just like to plug that if folks are interested in learning more about bringing more intentional yoga and mindfulness into the classroom, I actually do have a training, a
No.
preschool yoga teacher training
Mm-hmm.
that starts July 9th, and it's completely virtual. So if folks are interested in learning more of those nuances, or they're getting a little bit bored of like the same old routine in their classroom, or like you have an interest in yoga for you, but you're wondering how does that translate into the preschool classroom? I'm happy to, provide that information. I'd love to share these gifts with as many folks that are willing to learn. So,
So would you please send me that flyer and I'll put your porch play chat in so that people would have time to see that, hear that, and take advantage of that. And it starts
yeah.
July 9th, you said?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll get you in there. I'll just
Cool.
move someone else around so that we can
Thank
do that.
you.
So send that to me, and when I post it, as soon as I already have scheduled the first week, but nobody knows the ones I did 2 days ago, but
Okay.
nobody's been given those, so I'll plug you in there.
Okay. That would be amazing. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I would love a full cohort. I'm opening up just 15 spots and it's the inaugural cohort. So these folks would really they'd be founding members of this training, but it's something that I've wanted to do for like over 10 years. And I've been asked multiple times after conferences, like, hey, do you have anything more that I can do with you, like a course or a training? And I've always just put it on the back burner, but no more. July
No
9th, it's
more.
happening.
Okay. Oh, so hang right there while I close this out.
Okay.
So to learn more about IPA USA, please visit our website at ipausa.org. And until next time, keep on playing.
Love that.